I walked across the graduation stage with a smile that felt borrowed, my heartbeat echoing louder than the applause that wasn't meant for me. Every seat in the auditorium seemed filled with families clapping, recording, cheering, everyone except mine. 3 chairs in the front row, each labeled with my family's last name, sat untouched. The sight of them stung more deeply than I expected, like a reminder carved in ice. While I accepted my diploma, shaking hands with the dean, I already knew the truth I didn't want to face. My parents weren't running late. They weren't stuck in traffic. They weren't parking the car. They were exactly where they chose to be, at home, entertaining guests, passing snacks around during their precious Super Bowl party, laughing, celebrating, living a day as if I didn't have one of the biggest moments of my life. I held myself together until the ceremony ended. The moment I stepped into the cold February parking lot, the weight in my chest became too heavy to pretend with. My diploma nearly slipped from my hands, the paper bending under the pressure of my trembling. That was the moment something inside me cracked, and something deeper, quieter, finally opened its eyes. My name is Annabelle Rowan, and the morning of my graduation began with a hope I should have been smarter than to carry. I woke up before dawn, the kind of nervous excitement buzzing through my veins that only comes from achieving something you bled for. My black graduation gown hung from the closet like a tiny victory waving at me. 6 long years of night classes after my jobs, of skipping weekends, of choosing discipline over comfort, it had all led to this day. I brewed a cup of coffee, letting the warmth calm the tremble in my hands. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to imagine how my family might show up. Maybe my mom would smile that gentle smile she used to give me when I was little. Maybe my dad would clap with that stiff, proud pat of his. Maybe Mason, my brother, would stand with his hands in his pockets pretending he didn't care, but secretly proud. Families had moments like that every day. Why couldn't mine? While getting dressed, I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for a, "We're leaving now," or even a simple, "Proud of you." Nothing came. Instead, I received a burst of messages from our family group chat, except none of them were about me. A picture of my mom's famous buffalo dip. A joke from my dad about which team would fail him. Mason bragging about his bets. Not one person mentioned my ceremony. Not one asked where to sit or what time it started. Still, I convinced myself they'd show up. Maybe those messages were just an attempt to hide their nerves. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Maybe they were trying to act normal. I held on to that tiny thread of hope as I arrived at the auditorium. Families flooded in wearing bright colors, holding flowers and balloons. Children wove through the legs of excited parents. A photographer snapped pictures for groups that seemed endless. The ushers guided me to my row, front and center. 3 empty seats with my last name printed neatly on white cards waited beside me. I ran my fingers over the back of the chair, swallowing the rising ache. "They'll be here," I whispered to myself. The lights dimmed, students shuffled into place. The ceremony began. I checked my phone one last time. Still nothing from them. Instead, another picture appeared. My parents' television blasting pregame commentary, a beer in my dad's hand, Mason laughing in the background. Their smiles were wide and unbothered. The world in that photo felt bright, too bright. It hit me then. They hadn't even thought about coming. They hadn't planned to. Those reserved seats had never been for them. They were props in a story I kept writing alone. By the time I left the building, the applause had already faded behind me. The parking lot wind bit through my gown, sharp and merciless. I barely made it past the last row of cars before my knees buckled. I sank onto the curb, clutching my diploma, breathing hard through the tightness in my chest. My phone buzzed again. Another picture from the party. Chicken wings, beer, my mother laughing with her best friend. Not one message asking how my ceremony went. Not one congratulations bell. Not even a lazy sorry we missed it. My tears came quietly, slipping down without permission. Not loud sobs, just slow, quiet drops that held years of little disappointments I had swallowed whole. I wiped my face with my sleeve and laughed softly, a bitter, hollow sound. I had walked that stage alone. They had chosen snacks and football. I didn't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the graduates and their families to leave. Long enough for my tears to dry in the cold wind. Long enough for the pain to burn itself into something sharper. When my phone buzzed again, I expected another picture from the party, but it wasn't them. It was Aunt Helena. Saw some photos online. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Call me when you can. The message was simple, but it landed with a weight that steadied me. Someone had seen me today. Someone who cared without asking for anything back. I stared at the message while my breath clouded the frigid air. My diploma lay across my lap like a question I had ignored too long. I couldn't go home to them. I couldn't pretend anymore. Something inside me had changed. My fingers moved as if guided by instinct. I opened a travel app and scrolled through a list of flights I had saved months ago. Places I always told myself I'd visit someday. Colorado. A quiet retreat resort on a mountain. A place I bookmarked during one of my lowest nights. I had always rejected the idea. Money, time, responsibility, family. But the truth was simpler. My family only needed me when it benefited them. And it had cost me everything. My thumb hovered before tapping purchase. A one-way ticket. The confirmation email arrived with a soft chime. For the first time in years, I had chosen myself. The airport felt strangely soothing, like stepping into a world that didn't expect anything from me. People rushed by with suitcases and coffee cups, families hugged at arrivals, announcements echoed across the terminal. No one knew me here. No one expected me to apologize for existing or shrink to make space for someone louder. I checked in, my hands steady for the first time that day. A quiet glow of relief warmed my chest, though guilt occasionally tried to slip in. Each time it did, I pushed it away. I had given my family more than enough chances. This was my turn. When I boarded the plane, I took the window seat and rested my forehead against the cool glass. The city lights blinked below like tiny fireflies. As the plane rose through the clouds, I felt something inside me lift too, something heavy I had carried for far too long. I landed in Denver around midnight. The air was colder, sharper, but it woke me up in a way nothing else had in months. I took a shuttle to the car rental area and picked up a small SUV. The moment I stepped outside, the mountains loomed over the horizon, dark and massive, like guardians watching silently. Driving through the winding road toward the resort felt surreal. The headlights cut through layers of fog, and tall pines surrounded me on both sides. The silence wasn't empty. It felt like a blanket. By the time I reached the retreat, a modern lodge tucked between two snow-covered hills, my body buzzed from exhaustion and adrenaline. I checked in quickly, and the attendant handed me a key to a private cabin. "Breakfast starts at 6, and if you need anything, just tap the service button," she said gently. I nodded, too tired to respond. The cabin was warm, lit softly by a fireplace. The windows framed the snowy mountains like a painting I was suddenly living inside. I kicked off my shoes, loosened my graduation gown from my bag, and hung it carefully in the closet. I didn't know why. Maybe it deserved a place to rest too. I collapsed on the bed without even changing out of my clothes. Sleep took me fast, deep and dreamless. I woke to sunlight piercing through the curtains, casting gold ribbons across the wooden walls. For a moment, I forgot everything. I forgot the empty chairs, the party photos, the tightness in my chest. It was just me, the quiet, and the mountains. Then my phone buzzed aggressively. I took a breath before picking it up. 42 missed calls, 32 messages, a flood of notifications from my family chat. The first one was from Mom. "Mom, where are you? Why didn't you come home after the ceremony?" My jaw clenched. Ceremony? They didn't even show up. Then Dad. "Dad, we waited for you. Why didn't you tell us where you were going?" As if the seats reserved with their names weren't empty. As if they hadn't chosen a football game over their daughter. Then Mason. "Mason, call Mom, she's freaking out." I exhaled slowly. They weren't messaging because they cared. They were messaging because they didn't like being out of control. Then came the tone shift, like it always did. "Mom, I hope you're not trying to make us feel guilty." "Dad, this isn't funny, your mother is worried." Mom again. "You should have told us you'd be disappearing, very irresponsible." The knot in my stomach returned. The knot I had tried so hard to untangle over the years. The one tied by every dismissed feeling, every invalidated moment, every time I was made to believe I wasn't enough. A final message appeared. "Mom, it's not our fault you planned it on a game day." There it was. The truth of how they saw me, typed in one careless line. I put the phone face down on the table and let the silence wrap around me. After breakfast, I took the trail behind the cabin, which led to a lookout deck at the mountain's edge. Snow crunched beneath my boots, and the air tasted clean, as if the world had been rinsed overnight. For the first time in years, I breathed deeply. Standing at the lookout, I thought about all the versions of myself I had abandoned for them. The girl who stayed home from school events when they forgot to pick her up, the teenager who didn't argue when they praised Mason for things I worked twice as hard for, the adult who kept giving chances to people who didn't care to keep them. The world stretched endlessly below me, and I let the truth settle. I wasn't running away. I was finally walking toward something. My phone buzzed again, a video call from Mom. I declined. Then again. And again. Finally, a message came through from someone unexpected. Aunt Helena. Where did you go? Call me when you're ready. No pressure. Just those words made the tightness in my chest ease. She had always been different. She never raised her voice, never made me feel small, never chose a party over my milestones. When I was little, she was the only adult who asked how I really felt. She was the only one who ever listened without judgment. I called her. She picked up on the first ring. Sweetheart? Her voice was soft, careful. Are you safe? Yes, I whispered. I'm okay. I'm just away. She didn't ask for details. She didn't demand explanations. She just breathed out slowly, like she had been holding her worry quietly. You did the right thing, she said finally. My throat tightened. How can you say that? You don't even know what I did. I don't need to know the specifics, she replied. I know you, and if you left, it's because you reached your limit. You've carried more than anyone knows. Tears pricked my eyes, not from pain, but from someone finally seeing me. We talked for half an hour. She didn't judge, didn't guilt me, didn't push me to go home. She just reminded me I wasn't alone. Before hanging up, she said, Annabelle, you deserve peace. Stay where you feel valued. I didn't realize how much I needed someone to say that. When I returned to the cabin, the sun was beginning to set behind the mountains, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. I sat on the porch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. My phone vibrated again. This time the message was short. Mom, we need to talk now. Then another. Dad, come home immediately. The old Annabelle would have panicked. She would have grabbed her keys, driven home, apologized for upsetting them, tried to fix everything. But the girl sitting here wasn't her anymore. The mountains watched over me, silent and strong. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for choosing myself. The sun was sinking behind the horizon as Annabelle stood outside the hospital, the cold wind brushing against her cheeks. She had left her mother inside the maternity ward with the nurse, and for a long moment, she simply stood there, breathing deeply. Everything felt unreal, almost dreamlike. The message, the fight, the shattered truth, and now a newborn baby who carried a piece of her mother's past. Half-sister. The word tasted strange in her mind. She sat on a bench near the entrance, hugging herself tightly. She didn't cry. She couldn't. The tears felt stuck somewhere deep inside her chest, trapped by shock. Minutes later, the hospital doors slid open, and Helena hurried out with wide, panicked eyes. Annabelle! She cried, rushing toward her. Don't disappear like that again. You scared me. Annabelle didn't move. She simply stared at her mother. You should go home and rest. You must be exhausted. Helena shook her head firmly. I'm not leaving you alone. Not after everything. She crouched in front of Annabelle, placing both hands on her daughter's knees. I know you're hurt. I know you're angry. And you have every right to be. But please, don't shut me out. Annabelle looked away, her lips trembling. I don't know how to feel, Mom. You hid something this big. You lied for years. You let Dad treat me like a burden, and you acted like everything was fine. But it wasn't. Nothing was fine. Helena's face crumbled with guilt. I know, I failed you. I failed myself too. But I thought I was protecting you. From what? Annabelle asked softly. The truth? Helena sat beside her, staring straight ahead, the wind gently stirring her hair. From my mistakes, she whispered. From my shame? From the fear that if you knew the truth, you would hate me. Annabelle swallowed hard. I don't hate you. I just don't understand you. Helena smiled sadly. Then let me explain. Everything. No more hiding. Annabelle turned toward her slowly, silently giving permission. Her mother inhaled deeply. Before I married your father, I met someone else. Someone I loved more deeply than I ever thought possible. But life was cruel and we couldn't be together. Your father knew about him long before you were born, and he never forgave me for it. When he left, he blamed me for things I didn't do. I didn't cheat. I didn't betray him. But he wanted to hurt me, and he used you to do it. He called you nothing, a waste. A mistake. Every single word he used today. He used them on me too. Annabelle felt her chest tighten. And you stayed? I stayed because I had you, Helena said, her voice quivering. You were the one thing in my life that gave me purpose. You were the proof that I could still love, still fight, still exist. I stayed because I didn't want you growing up without a family, even a broken one. Annabelle blinked rapidly, trying to push away the burn in her eyes. I just wish you told me earlier. I know, Helena said, tears falling now. And I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough. A long silence settled between them, fragile, healing, real. Mom, Annabelle whispered, what about the baby? Helena exhaled slowly. She's innocent, just like you were. She doesn't deserve to grow up with shame or secrecy. I want to give her the life I never had the courage to give you. Annabelle took a deep breath. Then we start over. All of us. Helena's eyes widened. You mean that? Annabelle nodded. Yes, but things will be different this time. No lies, no hiding. And I won't pretend to forget everything. Dad said today I can't, but I'm not going to let his cruelty define us. A relieved sob escaped Helena before she leaned in and wrapped Annabelle tightly in her arms. For the first time since morning, Annabelle allowed herself to lean into the embrace. After a while, they walked back inside the hospital together. The hallway lights glowed warm and soft, almost welcoming. A nurse stood near the nursery window and waved them over. Would you like to see her? She asked kindly. Helena nodded and guided Annabelle forward. There she was, the newborn, sleeping peacefully inside a tiny incubator. Small fists curled, chest rising and falling in gentle breaths, a little pink blanket tucked around her. Annabelle stared at her quietly. She didn't feel anger, and she didn't feel joy. What she felt instead was something surprising, calm acceptance. This little baby had nothing to do with her father's bitterness or her mother's pain. She was just a new life, untouched by all of it. She's beautiful, Annabelle whispered. Helena's hand trembled as she reached for the glass. She looks like her sister. Annabelle gave a tiny smile. She'll have a better future. We'll make sure of it. Helena turned to her slowly, her eyes full of gratitude and disbelief. You're an incredible girl, Annabelle. Stronger than me. Kinder than I ever was. I don't deserve you. Annabelle shook her head. You're my mom. That's enough. Just then, Helena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then handed it to Annabelle. Dad had sent message after message. Do you think you're replacing me? Don't expect me back. You'll regret this. You're ruining everything. You destroyed this family. Annabelle stared at the messages calmly. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel fear. She didn't feel the need to answer. She didn't feel small. She felt free. Block him, Annabelle said quietly. Helena hesitated. Are you sure? Yes, Annabelle replied. We don't need his permission to live. Helena's trembling finger hovered for a second, then tapped block. Just like that, years of emotional chains broke apart. Helena began to cry again, but these tears were different, lighter, relieved, hopeful. Annabelle gently wiped them with her sleeve. Mom, she said softly, let's go home, as a family, our new family. Helena inhaled shakily, then nodded. Before they left, Annabelle placed one hand on the glass of the nursery window, whispering, Welcome to the world, little sister. I'm here. We're all going to be okay. When they stepped outside into the cool evening air, Annabelle felt something lift from her shoulders, a burden she had carried for far too long. For the first time, the future didn't look frightening. It looked wide open, and she was finally ready to walk into it.